Okay. Hi, everybody. So thank you for joining us for the committee meeting for Fire Station 4. I'd like to introduce our panelists or our presenters today. My name is Valerie Tam. I'm the project engineer for the project. And we have Matt Raschke, our project manager from Public Works Engineering, as well as Assistant Director Holly Boyd from Public Works Engineering as well, and Prijit Medved, project engineer with Public Works Engineering also. We also have our consultant, BRW Architects, Chris Ford, Megan Zhang, and Chris Sano, who will be helping with this presentation. During today's meeting, we do ask that you remain muted. The meeting will be recorded and available for viewing on our project website. Next, to look at the agenda of our meeting, first, BRW Architects will be presenting an overview of the project and proposed design. We'll then go over the current project timeline, followed by our Q&A session. Oh, just forgot somebody. Actually, we have the fire department here as well. We have Kevin McNally as well. Kevin McNally on the line, if you can see his square. Going back to our agenda. So we will have we will be going over the current project timeline, followed by a Q&A session. For the Q&A, please use the Q&A button down on the below your screen. You can ask questions at any point during the presentation, but we will address them during the Q&A portion of the meeting. So if you would like to also speak or ask your questions in person, please note you would like to speak with your question. We'll then wrap up the meeting after the Q&A to let you know how you can get project update notifications. And as you exit out of this meeting, a 2-question survey will pop up. Please answer the questions so that we can get feedback from you on the project. And we greatly appreciate you taking time out of your day just to join us. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Chris and Megan of BRW Architects.
Thanks, Valerie. This is Chris Ford with BRW Architects. I'm here with Megan Zhang, and we're going to be sharing in the presentation. We also have Chris Sano on the call. He'll be also available if we have any more specific questions, but Megan and I are going to team up here on the presentation. Our part of this presentation will be want to show the existing station and some of the what we call site constraints or key components of the existing station and its surroundings that have a direct effect on our planning for the new station. Then we'll go over the operational requirements and needs. As public safety facility and the critical component of public safety, we want to first really focus on having the best and most efficient operations. Then Megan is going to talk about I'll continue with the building arrangement and some of the key spaces. Basically breaks up into 4 different zones regarding operations, community, living quarters, and exercise. And then Megan will take it from there regarding the exterior aesthetics, the materials, the massing, and some photo shots of how it'll fit into the existing neighborhood and surrounding trees. So with that, I'll keep going with, this is our current site. This is the fire station built in the 50s. Right now, rather small, rather short. Back then, it fit 2 fire trucks. These days, the trucks are bigger, no longer fit. All that's really stationed out of here right now is an ambulance company with their rig and 2 or 3 firefighters, the current use. In red, those red circles along Middlefield and up East Meadow are the trees around the perimeter that we're going to keep. The red square towards the back where it says fuel tanks, that's an underground fuel tank, and there's some above ground pumps. The green arrows off of East Meadow are the existing driveways for either firefighters coming and going or access to the electrical substation on the right-hand side down Middlefield. And then finally, that yellow square out onto Middlefield, that's where the ambulance, formerly the trucks, but now the ambulances respond on all calls out to Middlefield. And you see that arrow pointing both ways. That's sort of a key component I'm going to talk about in a minute. That means that the ambulance now has to back into the station as opposed to driving through. So on the next slide, we're going to show the plan for the new operation. Before we do that, here's some photos outside. You might recognize these up and down Middlefield and East Meadow. That one upper left photo is sort of the key view that we're going to be coming back to when we show the massing of the new station. Next. Interior upper left, what we call the apparatus bays, which is where the ambulance is parked now. Upper right is sort of a retrofit, may do as best they can for some exercise equipment, because that is an important component of being a member of the fire department. Lower left is living, eating, kitchen prep area. Lower right is one of the bunk rooms, again with sort of made do with some temporary walls and beds in a former bunk room area. Again, making the best of this very old station that really needs to be replaced. Now we have, again, the orientation is the same as we saw before, where we have Middlefield going left to right along the top and East Meadow on the left-hand side. The big green arrows, again, starting with the trucks and engine and ambulance, they, instead of having to back in, stop traffic and back in off Middlefield, now they'll be able to do what we call drive-through, which is they would come in off of East Meadow and then come in the back of the apparatus bay, drive straight in, then be ready to go out on the call. So those are the two main apparatus, an engine and an ambulance that you see ready to go out on the Middlefield. The other engine pointed the other direction to the left is what's called a reserve unit. That's not typically going to be going out on a call. That's parked there in case one of the other rigs is unavailable or gets called out of county, or a special event, special call. That's not part of the everyday response. That's a reserve unit that we're going to be incorporating into the design. Second component in the orange and the green parking is the visitor area. So when people come to visit the station or would come to like a community meeting, their ADA parking space accessed off of Meadow. The big orange arrow in upper left is the main entrance. There's a lobby and a firefighter there to greet you. And then the brown color there called community is a open meeting space that is not only for community meetings, but firefighter training, in-house meetings, CERT meetings, CPR classes, and such. Sort of a flexible space that's all to the left side of the apparatus bay. Next component is, their home. It's the living quarters for up to 6 firefighters, 24/7. Along Middlefield is the kitchen dining area, sort of an active area that's got some open windows to outdoor dining and views to the right-hand side, and put those along Middlefield because of the traffic noise, and the sleeping area there along to the bottom of that is a row of bedrooms, all with outside windows and separated as far as we could from the noise along Middlefield. Finally, the yellow is exercise, both indoor and outdoor. Like it showed in that earlier photo, this is getting back to more of a standard size for the crews to get in their exercise. It's also nice to have the ability to open it up and get fresh air into the exercise area, and also do some of their rotations outside. I'm going to turn it over to Megan. She's going to talk first a little bit about our neighborhood and the existing building, and then move into some of the components, key components of the design and material decisions.
Hello, this is Megan. So first I wanted to talk a little bit about the surrounding contextual site. So the neighborhood of Fire Station is very residential, but down the street we have the Little League field, considering that there's going to be kids that will be walking along our site, as well as the church that is just right next to our new fire station. One thing we kept in mind that's very important to us is the connection of what Chris had just talked about with building programming and the design, exterior design of the building, to have this balance of serving the essential life safety operations and a good presentation of the open and inviting public image of what this station is going to look like and represent. One thing about our massing design, we kept in mind about the pedestrian scale along East Meadow and Middlefield, knowing that, you know, we have the Little League on the side and the church next to it. We need to keep the pedestrian level in mind and how to design the massing in that way. And still having the apparatus space serving the trucks in operationally, but also having it serve as a public safety beacon to kind of showcase what happens here at the fire station. Some of the material selection that we did for the fire station is keeping a really simple wood aesthetic material and incorporating white plaster vertical grouping. So a couple of things about our material selection is sustainability, easy to maintain for the fire station to the firefighters who are going to be stationed here. Product availability, we wanted to source products that are close in vicinity and not have them shipped over the seas. Durability and afterlife use. We really wanted to emphasize on the sustainability part of our material selection and how all the material will deconstruct and recycle after their use. Here is a rendering of the site at the Middlefield and East Meadow Street corner view of the future fire station. Here's the East Meadow Street view of you walking from the church towards the community room and to the intersection at Middlefield. Here's an aerial view of how the station is going to look like at the street and the back of the house where the return apron is going to be. Here are some contextual elevations to show a street rendering of how it's going to like when you're driving down Middlefield and East Meadow to kind of have our station fit in with the context with Littlefield and the church. So here at the Middlefield elevation, you can see our fire station on the right, and then the bus station that's in the middle with this electrical substation to the left of it, and then the Little League field to the very left. The second elevation along East Meadow, you see the fire station at the corner on the left, and as you go down the street, you see the first pedestrian. Well, you see the driveway for the return apron for the fire station, and then you see the First Presbyterian Church, and then after that, you see the park. Here is an existing shot of the Curtin Fire Station with the church in the back and the electrical substation right behind the fire station, kind of under the street light beacon. And then to the left is where you'll see the Little League field. And here is a site contextual rendering of how the new proposed fire station will look like at the street corner. Which is, if from the view of it, is lower than the church. The highest point of the fire station design currently is at 25 feet at the apparatus bay, and it slopes back down into the back of house of the fire station in relation to the church. That's a little bit that's shorter than the church. And then at the street level, you can see here in the rendering, we kept it at 15 feet relatively to pedestrian level. So here's existing exterior, proposed exterior.
Great, thank you, Chris and Megan. So to talk about our project timeline, the proposed design was recently presented to the Architectural Review Board for preliminary review. We had positive feedback, and we are here today for public comments on the design before continuing design development and applying for formal ARB review. As you see in the project timeline, our next step is obtaining formal ARB approval, and this process can take up to a year. The project may go through multiple formal reviews and department review committee meetings. Following ARB approval, BRW will prepare construction documents and obtain building permit approval. And next, the city will go out to bid for the project, which can take about a month. The city then will select a contractor, and city council will need to approve the construction contract. And then the city has an earmark of $5.2 million of state grant funding that requires us to submit the executed construction contract by June 30th of next year. And any delay in design could jeopardize this grant funding. So in order to meet this deadline, the city is looking to submit the formal ARB package as soon as possible. Initial ARB feedback was that the proposed design met their guidelines, and a major redesign could create a bold statement. A major redesign to create a bold statement can prevent timely submission for the formal ARB review. And with that, we'll move on to our Q&A session to address any questions or comments you may have on the project. We can go to the next slide, Chris and Megan. Yes. As mentioned before, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen if you would like to ask your questions or provide any feedback in person. I saw some notes already in the chat for people who do want to speak. You'll be allotted 3 minutes to speak, and I'll be helping keep time. So, to start, let's see. So we have Hamilton wanted to speak. I'm going to go ahead and allow you to speak.
Okay, I have like 3 or 4 questions. My first question is, what's the design number of years you've designed this fire station to, the longevity? The current one has been there for 70 years. So with the materials you're doing, what do you project the lifetime based on the durability of the fire station to be?
Great question. Chris and Megan, would you like to address this?
Sure, yeah, this is Chris. We project out not only on the durability, what's called essential service requirements for the durability and seismic strength of the building, but also the durability of the interior environment with 24/7 and a lot of activity. And then, as Megan was mentioning, on the exterior materials, durability and easy to clean. We project out typically with a building on its first life would be 50 years, but as you mentioned, this one has been serving the city for 70 years. But 50 years is our target for not only the survivability and durability of the interior materials, but also working with the fire department on what they anticipate as future operation needs going to the future. If the fire department wanted to weigh in on anything about the operation side, we could ask that question separately. But from the architectural design, we start with a target of 50 years.
Okay, that's good. I mean, I'd say 50 years is the minimum, but at least it's not 30, which is what I was worried about. The next thing is about earthquake resilience. This fire station is 5 miles from the San Andreas Fault. You look at Stanford, they've been built to withstand and continue operation on an 8.0, which is what's considered the maximum speed limit of the San Andreas Fault. They anticipate it won't go above 8. How is the whole reason we're doing this, like 100% of the reason, or like, besides updating, is so it will remain operational and be able to run around and put out fires and rescue people after a major earthquake. So I want to hear what you have to say on, can this continue to operate if we had the biggest theoretical earthquake on San Andreas Fault, which is an 8.0?
Sure, it's a great question, and there's two components to answering that. One is what's called, and as you mentioned, with the distance to the fault, there's a seismicity study and called near fault acceleration study. That's part of the geotechnical work that'll be wrapping up soon. That's then gives the forces to the structural engineer. The second, as I mentioned, is as an essential service facility, it's got what's called a 1.5 importance factor, meaning that it's a 50% increase of the not only the seismic strength, but the accommodation for what they call survivability, usability immediately after a quake. That also then ties into what we further look at as redundant systems. That's redundant power supply, redundant communication, and materials that can withstand the seismic load so that there's no interruption. So again, the three things we look at is the local seismicity study. If there could be a near fault, because beyond 8 miles away, the 1.5 importance factor on the seismic strengthening, and then the selection of materials and anchorage details that will keep the.
Do you know for the seismic what you're designing it to withstand and remain operational?
I don't have that number top of my head now.
Is the glass all like super tempered and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. The fourfold doors in the front are all tempered glass, and then the upper glazing be detailed for lateral strength.
Yeah, because I mean the what I want to avoid is a cop out where they say, well, we designed it so no one will get hurt if it's in 8.0. We want it to go beyond that so that it can provide the life-saving services to the neighborhood after a major earthquake.
Oh yeah, no, that what you're saying about survivability and usability, that's actually a state code requirement that this facility meet the Essential Services Act.
Then I'm over halfway done. Then my next question is, this is right between two creeks. And, the problem with the 100-year flood zone is it's the 100-year flood zone based on measurements from 30 years ago. And, the new 200-year flood, the old 200-year flood zone is the new 100-year flood zone once they update everything to take into account all the global warming that's going on, especially over the life of this building. And you're sandwiched between two creeks here. So I'm wondering, and sometimes like we have stuff that just doesn't even make sense. Like in Houston, they had two 500-year floods within 1 week of each other. So I think when you design to the 100-year flood, you're probably under designing because that's a 30-year-old measurement that doesn't take into account the rapid change of climate change. So my question is, are you doing anything so that if there is flooding, like if the streets, there was flooding in the streets, that it's not going to come into the building, it's not going to cause damage? Let's say, because I think it's in a 500-year flood zone, or is it in a 200-year flood zone?
This is Chris again. So we'll defer to the Public Works and their requirements on the final detailing. Once we have some momentum on the layout, we can work with them and our geotechnical and their utility folks on if any supplemental measures are prudent for flood protection.
But it's really easy. I mean, all you do is you raise the base a foot or something, right? So like I think in like the area I'm in, which is in a flood zone, I think it has to be 3 feet above something. But even just a little bit of raising of that elevation could save a lot of damage from an unforeseen flood event. Because I mean, they're right on either side of you, the creeks. And then my last question is, I was here when the Oakland Hills fire happened. I actually watched it because I was in Alameda playing volleyball at the time. And I watched it burn like, a ton of houses. And the big problem is the embers. So, the embers. So if we had a huge fire with a strong wind coming off of the foothills, it just blows all these embers out over the city. And so, how hardened is the fire station to, let's say, those embers? And, are you going to build it to the WUI standard, which is the wilderness urban interface, where they do things like micro screen the vents so the embers don't come in through the vents, which is how most buildings burn down, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're very familiar with the urban wilderness interface requirements. And when Megan was talking about the wood aesthetic, it's our proposal, it still needs to be vetted through ARB again, maybe a couple more times, was to have it's a porcelain product, not an actual wood product. It's textured and colored and matted to be a wood look. Some of the other specifics on the materials we kind of went over quickly was the underside of the eaves is all metal, no exposed wood, and the roof will be a TPA, which is a single ply, like a plastic coated roof. So yeah, we're designing to that standard, absolutely. And we hope to be a model for neighbors that want to rebuild or retrofit, that they recognize that they're really, you know, the urban wildlife interface has sort of been questioned because, like you said, with downwind embers, it's been, as we also with Santa Rosa, it's
Exactly. It just keeps going. And the last thing we want is the firefighters to have to spend their time defending their own building instead of helping others. So I'm glad to hear you're doing it. You know, sometimes the ARB is just much more interested in design than they are functionality. And my questions are around resilience, because we really want this to be a care providing facility at the times of most need. And if anything, to over engineer stuff so they can help the community as much as possible in a crisis.
Right. That's
So
great.
thank
Really
you.
appreciate your
Thank you.
comment.
Thank you for letting me speak.
Next, we have a few Q&A questions that are easy to answer. So Jensen, your question was, when is construction estimated to start and complete? For our project timeline, we need to start construction July of 2024, so next year. This is to be sure that we do receive our $5.2 million grant funding. And the anticipated construction duration is 1.5 years. Let's see. We also have Kevin Mayer noting a minor issue. 1 or 2 slides seem to show lawns. Is landscaping still to be designed? Consider low water, low maintenance native plants. Chris and Megan, do you want to address that?
Yes, we are still in schematic design, but in the next phase, we'll be bringing on the landscape architect to kind of fully design the site with, plazas, and we'll keep in consideration about native plants. We do have an arborist on board with us, so we'll divert to him about his experts in that.
And from our doing fire stations for many years, we know that the firefighters don't want lawns either. So it's going to be easy to maintain and drought tolerant. Absolutely.
Great, thank you. Next, we'll move on to Shani. You had asked to ask your questions verbally. Let me go ahead and provide you permission to talk. You can go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm Shani Kleinhaus. I live in the neighborhood, and I'm a parks commissioner, but I'm not speaking with that function in place, just as a resident. One comment is that this design replaces sort of organic, humble look with a very cold, industrial, and very not dominating design. And to me, that's not really compatible with our neighborhood. I prefer the more humble design and not so much glass. And with the glass, I have another concern, which is, and it's a question really, if you're looking at bird safety in this and having some kind of treatment or the birds can see through this structure. Well, this is on 2 major streets in Palo Alto. This neighborhood has a lot of birds, and areas that are not retrofitted, including my home before I retrofitted it, had a lot of bird collisions. And I just don't understand, and maybe you can explain whether there are visual cues or other retrofitting system in glass, and if so, what it is, or if it's possible to have less glass.
Great, thank you. Chris and Megan, did you want to address this question as well?
I think as we get, this is Chris again, as we get further into the design and study the actual layout of the glass, there'll be accommodations for this scrim that can be bird appropriate. In terms of the natural light, I understand the comment. If there's others on the design team that wanted to weigh in, certainly he could jump in. But my first thing to say is we wanted to really try to work with the community and strike a balance between the openness, the public view, the ability for passers, either cars or pedestrians, as Megan was talking about, kids going to the Little League or to the park, that they see their firefighting crew in action. They see the apparatus available and waiting to help. At night, that it would be a beacon of safety and 24/7 occupancy and light. We don't want to make it bolder, too bold or imposing. We want to strike that balance of having a public facility that people are proud of, that recognize as forward-looking and open to the public. Again,
You never actually ask the public if they want that. You want to show the station to the public, but then you never ask the public if they actually appreciate that in-your-face design. And you're assuming that that's something that everybody can be proud of, but would it be possible that people actually prefer something much more humble and trees around it instead of this industrial design? I just think that you're making a determination on what people want.
Thank you for your feedback, Shani. We will consider it. I did want to address though that planning will require in regards to your bird concern. Planning does require fritted bird safe glass, and we've used it on recent projects. But thank you for your feedback. We will keep that in consideration as we move forward with design. Moving on to our next question in the Q&A. Kevin Mayer, you did have a follow-up in regard to demolition starting in July 2024. Yes, we will be breaking ground in July 2024. Let's see. We also have Jason. Jason, you had asked, are we keeping the cell tower flagpole? So currently the cell tower flagpole we did receive a request for demo by the lessee of the flagpole. Matt, did you want to address anything else in regards to that?
Well, it's currently not operational. They've already removed the equipment serving the cell tower. So at this point, it is just a flagpole, but that equipment has a deep foundation because it's more than just a flagpole originally. So there'll be that leaseholder will be demolishing it in the near future, and then the new project will include a conventional flagpole. Once we're not completely sure of the timing of the demolition yet, but there will likely be an interim period where we'll have a temporary flagpole for the current station when the cell tower equipment is completely removed.
Great. Let's see. Sharon, you had asked, it looks like there is very little storage. It seems short-sighted to not add a second story over the living space to allow some ability to expand. Matt, did you want to kick this off before BRW answers?
Yeah, and then also maybe our Stephen Lindsay, assistant chief, may want to weigh in on that. I mean, it is a significant increase in size over the current station, and I believe it's also a significant amount of storage as to what we have currently. So we'll start with Chris from the architect. If you want to add to that?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of different ways to talk about that, Matt. As you mentioned, we're going from 2 firefighters sleeping there to the ability to go up to 6 and 3 apparatus bays instead of the 2 smaller ones. When we do what we call programming and operations review, all the parts and pieces and space needs that go into a new modern future looking fire station. Much of what we would think of storage in terms of the personal protection equipment, the air tanks, all of the extra gear to respond, that is all worked into its own individual spaces and rooms throughout the plan. When it comes to firefighters' personal clothing and gear, they have lockers. We have a locker room for all of that. When it comes to the kitchen area, there's pantries, there's multiple refrigerators. So you probably won't see a big excessive storage room just for extra stuff. It's much more strategically placed throughout the station to meet all of the needs of equipment now and growth in the future. So, and as Matt mentioned, it is quite an expansion. We want to keep it 1 story for response and speed of ability to get to the rig, get the gear together, and get out on the call. And the single story is the best way to achieve that.
Chief Litzy, did you want to add anything else to this question?
Just to echo what the architect said, there is a lot of integrated storage within the station. There's turnout storage within the apparatus bay for our firefighter gear. And then as far as the interior of the station goes, there is ample storage for our firefighters' uniforms and also their bedding and personal hygiene. So we're pretty confident with the storage, but thank you for that.
Next, we have a question from Grant. Currently, there is room for a CERT trailer in the back of the lot. Will this still be available? I believe, yes, that CERT trailer will still be remaining at the fire station. Chief Lindsay, did you have anything else to address in regards to that?
Nothing to add at this time. Just that we're taking that into consideration in the design.
Yep. Thank you. Let's see, we have a question from Stephen Galloway. You just mentioned the problem with the major statement redesign. Is that a possibility? Is it something that has been suggested? And then also, are there currently any other looming issues that could upset the timeline? Matt, did you want to address this?
Well, the reason we brought up the major statement was a couple of comments from at least 1 or 2 specific architectural review board members, suggested to go bolder and make a bigger architectural statement. What I think, we had primarily hired BRW and they were for their expertise in creating a contextual design, and that we wanted a fire station that fit the neighborhood And I think, you know, that this design that's, I think, inspired by the, you know, Eichlers and, you know, the single story primarily in the area is kind of the direction we were preferred to take. I don't know, if, maybe Chris, if you want to add anything to that.
No, it's Chris. I think, yeah, you captured it. Yet I think at least one of the ARB members sort of was thinking back to Station 3, which is very tall and a bolder statement on a much smaller site, but it was, you know, in the corner of a park and sort of a gateway coming up in Barcadero. So that was brought up. But I think, Matt, you captured that, you know, the challenge of balancing not only operational, which is key, as the chief mentioned, single story works well, being inspired by Eichler, but not trying to copy, you know, that exact scale, recognizing that the apparatus and the trucks are bigger, taller, wider, and taking all that to account. You know, we're
Yeah.
very respectful of the feedback, not only of the community members speaking today, but the ARB members that brought that up. I don't think it was brought up as a start over. They just wanted to sort of air some of their thoughts.
Great, thank you. Next question. Hopefully I didn't pronounce your name incorrectly. Dekbel or Deepel. You're asking in the chat if there. Let's see. This might be a question for Chief Lindsay, but is there how many times a day will there be a call for a fire truck?
Related to the school pedestrian and traffic along the middle field and East Meadow frontage because of the schools that I guess that are up the street on East Meadow.
Yeah, I can also give you permission to talk if you want to elaborate on your comment or question.
I'm not sure if this is exactly what he is or the question is regarding, but we are considering leaving and creating sort of a bigger waiting area on the corner.
Oh, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, there you
go. You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi. Yeah, the question is, you know, it's next to school, two busy schools, especially in the morning. There's a lot of kids and the library, of course. And on the design, how you actually understand how you're going to deal with the mass of kids that are going to pass there, if there's going to be any calls or trucks will need to drive in the morning time.
Okay. Matt, you can answer.
Yeah, so it's the driveway is the same as current, but one of the benefits of this design is that the apparatus, the trucks and the ambulance will actually be able to pull into the station from the back, whereas today they have to back in and create a longer disruption of the sidewalk traffic. So it's actually a
yeah,
benefit.
but today, you know, you're gonna use the middle, you're gonna East Meadow, okay? East Meadow, this is the main track for kids to go to school, not for Middlefield. You know, people come from all over, and they're using this path.
Yeah, we understand that. So we've been in talks with Transportations and our Safe Routes to School group in regards to you know, the amount of kids that end up passing through this intersection. It is part of elementary school, middle school, and high school safe routes to school. The corner that you saw in one of the renderings from BRW kind of shows up that corner a little bit more open. So it provides areas for students that are biking or walking to kind of be on the corner away from the street. And then also the fire station actually has a, when there is a call, there's a signal that actually controls the intersection when there is a call to help coordinate like the traffic signal. Does that address your question in regards to at least with the students? We do know that in the afternoons, it's a very, very busy intersection.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. The next question we have is from Stephen. Can you speak for a minute about the inspiration for the design approach and style and how it has evolved? I believe this is for Chris and Megan.
Thank you.
So I'm going to divert that question to our design director, Chris Sano.
Hello, thanks, Megan. Yeah, so the inspiration is, it all starts with the operational aspects of the fire station, of course, as our first responders. So operationally, the building layout has to accommodate their best practices. As has been mentioned, also, the apparatus are larger. The existing station is inadequate in size in all aspects. So naturally, this building is bigger footprint, larger scale. So knowing that we're dealing with a bigger building, we're on a major gateway corner, we're trying to balance the idea of allowing it to be a gateway building to Mitchell Park, but also deal with the scale in the residential neighborhood. So we went through multiple iterations of massing is kind of what we call it, just the three-dimensional aspects of it, the form of the building, looked at different roof forms that fit the context the best, dealing with the pedestrian scale as best as we can, but the apparatus bay obviously has to be larger to accommodate the size and all the equipment in there. And the modern aesthetic, mid-century modern aesthetic seem to be appropriate to balance the commercial heavy duty aspects of the building, but also the residential style and scale. And so that seemed to be the appropriate response. We tried to accommodate the pedestrian scale as well as the size of the apparatus, like I mentioned, and knowing that it was going to be kind of a mid-century modern, which the existing station has hints of that. So we took that as some inspiration, but wanted to apply a more organic, natural material feel, but still have that durability. And that's where the wood look porcelain tile comes in. So again, really trying to balance contemporary of the now, but also residential scale, forward thinking, but also embedded in the natural setting as best as we could.
Great, thank you, Chris. And that's all the questions we had in our Q&A. If you have any other burning questions, go ahead and submit them. Give like a few seconds. Let's see how fast everybody can type. But with that, let me go ahead and share my screen again.
Valerie, I think in the chat, just lost it. There was a question regarding if there was a study on how many times a day the fires.
Yes. Chief Lindsay, would you like to address that?
Yeah, and I think that was related to the foot traffic for the kids during school time. But in general, we run approximately 9,000 calls a year right now, is what our call volume is for the fire department as a whole. I don't have the data available to talk specifically about Station 4 and its call volume, but that's something that I can follow up and provide.
Great, thank you. And with that, so we would love for you all to stay up to date with our project. You can visit our project website at cityofpaloalto.org/firestation4, and also sign up for newsletters. We expect the newsletters will be sent during design milestones and then more frequent monthly newsletter as we start construction. So you'll get notification you'll also get notification for any public meetings that take place, such as the ARB formal review meetings and also any additional community meetings during design development. And then for any other questions, concerns, or feedback, please email Public Works Engineering at pwecips@cityofpaloalto.org. And as a reminder, as you exit out of this webinar, please answer the survey questions so we can get your feedback. We really thank you for coming to this meeting, being part of this process. And if you do have anything else, feel free to drop it in the chat, but thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.